All right, hey everybody. Thanks for tuning in today for the Sunday simplytest.me development stream. Hope you've had a good week. I know mine is a bit scattered because April has been the month of insanity. But we're going to tame some of that insanity by getting simplytest.me closer to its beta launch. So rather like simplytest.me is in production and running, but we're working on a new version of it, and that is in beta. Before I begin, I do want to give a bit of a shout out to some of our sponsors that help make all this possible. Tugboat QA provides all of our sandbox environments, and it's sponsored in kind by Tugboat. Tugboat is the fastest platform to automate the creation of preview and test environments. So when you go to Simply Test Me and you type in this form and click Launch Sandbox, that site you end up on is a Tugboat environment. And to Amazy.io, who is helping host the new version of Simply Test. So if we go to beta.simplytest.me, it's going to relaunch there we go, it launched. This is on Amazy's Lagoon cloud hosting infrastructure. So then that reads from our GitHub. So every time we push the GitHub, it gets sent off and builds on Lagoon, and we don't have to worry about hosting. Also, thanks to our development partners, QED42 is providing developer time for front-end theming. So this beautiful new design that you see is being accomplished through their developers. And to Bluehorn Digital, disclaimer is my company. I'm using my company time to do these Sunday live along with some development along the way, a lot of the back-end development. And Adam wrote a recent blog post about the Simply Test Me Partners Program and how different companies can get involved. And the link's here. I will copy it and paste it into the chat for anybody who is curious to read that along the way. And of course, to our monetary sponsors, Centauro, thank you for the monthly donation that helps keep everything going. And a special recognition to Maloon and Druid for the long-standing support with the infrastructure providers of Simply Test Me. And if you do want to help contribute, we have a bunch of individual contributors. This doesn't call them out, but I also don't like to say personal names all the time. But thank you to all the individual contributors. If you would like to help sponsor the project, which ensures paid development time to get bugs fixed, we do have an open collective where you can do a one-off donation, which many camps do through their contrib sponsorship tiers. Or we have the individual backers at $5 a month, or the organizational sponsors at $100 a month. Again, all of those help ensure that we get some active development and bugs are squashed. That allowed me to take my time to work on a lot of the back end. I do these live streams, which gives about 2 hours of development a week, but that's only 2 hours of development, and we all know 2 hours can only go so far when you have a big project like this. So thank you to the sponsors that help make this happen for this invaluable tool in the Drupal community. All right, now that that's done, I didn't have a set list of issues to go through. We do have some various things in here, but a lot of these can be tied to nice to haves, like instance launch definition constraint for this. Like that's validation. That's not really a beta blocker. That might be a release blocker or a nice to have after the release. So the thing I'm going to work on is testing. If you caught my stream last week, I'm actually going to close Slack. I don't need to have that going. If you caught my stream last week, we added Cypress.io, which if you're not familiar with Cypress, not the country, but Cypress like the tree name, .io is an automated end-to-end testing suite written in JavaScript. And it launches like in time that lets you click through your tests. And what I spent some time doing is getting it working with Simply Test Me. So if we go to our code inside of, I realize I can actually clean up some of this config a bit too. So we have it where we run open, and I'm actually going to make some quick config changes to this. But let's first open Cypress so you can see what it shows. And I'm going to do some configuration changes because I went with this on another project of my own and kind of cleaned up some of the config ways of doing things that feels a bit cleaner than what I set up here. So as this launches, it reads this cypress.json, and I have a plugin for Cypress that will read from these different environment files like ddev. So here's the base URL if it's ddev, and here's an install command. I'm going to delete all these example tests because that just makes things amuck. See if when I deleted those tests, it actually automatically upgraded here, or updated, not upgraded. It updated to show the tests that exist. But in my plugins, I'm adding the .env plugin, and then in support, I have a command called install Drupal. And what this does is it fetches the simply test install command. And that's how it knows to, if we're in ddev, to do ddev drush site install. But if we were in a CI environment, we could call this same command. So as I said, I kind of want to clean this up and not have to require the development environment, or sorry, not require the .env. But that's not a beta blocker, so I'm not going to actually do that right now. Sorry. Because we probably want to keep that, since Tugboat, part of this does require having some environment keys available. So we can just keep that going. And the way you make it work is you would just copy the relevant one to your .env. So in our GitHub actions, we could just copy, cp.env.ci to .env, and it's configured. We're not there yet. So let's go through, and we're just going to rerun some of these tests. So let's look at core versions on import install spec. So basically what this does is before each test, it installs Drupal, and it verifies that we can go to the endpoint and we have Drupal core versions on install of Drupal. So let's click that. It's not really a fully functional test. Like this could be in PHP unit functional. Oh, let's say, let me drag this over. So it launched a version of Chrome. If you've used Chrome driver before, it's actually like, it shows just Chrome. They have like this extra layer on top that gives you this nice user interface that shows everything that's going on. Our tests do take a while because we do a fresh install. And that's kind of a bummer. There's ways we could find that we could improve this. But what it's doing is it invoked that command. It's running ddev drush si. As I showed in our environment files, we could switch out that command. And after this installs, it is going to request that core version and verify that we got a 200 response and that it had more than one value returned. Again, this is something that could be in the Drupal PHP unit functional test, but it's not due to some interesting testing quirks with Drupal and the way that it registers its database, where whenever there's an HTTP request made, it assigns the current test prefix as a user agent, which kind of breaks outgoing HTTP requests during install. All right, so the test took 7 seconds, and it made the request, and it gave us the response. So now if I close this, I can hit stop to stop that test. We have also the project autocomplete, and this test running autocomplete. So if we run that, and one thing I want to do is maybe have like a database that we can import instead of having to do a full install, at least for local development. But I've been trying to, it's one of those chicken and egg, like I could spend a bunch of time figuring that out, or I could just let the test take a little longer. But we'll verify this goes through real quick. And when talking about that chicken and egg problem, I actually accidentally committed a debug statement here that stopped installing Drupal while testing the launch form. So that's one thing we can do as well. We could just say this test assumes that the site's installed, and if not, it crashes. So we did the install, and it's getting the page. All right, so that did some autocomplete testing. What we'll do now is we'll run the launch form spec, and this will actually test going through the JavaScript code. So those past two tests just tested API endpoints. Anything could have done that. But you'll see here that we're actually going through and, it could not find content Drupal core version with selector label, but never did. So it came through and it typed in the, oh, I forgot, as you hover over things, it shows snapshots. So it came in and it got the page. It typed in password policy. It did the arrow key down and enter to select the version. It verified that it picked the default version of 7.x1.0. There is an open issue that it shouldn't just pick the first version. It should maybe default to the most relevant one. But when we're writing these tests, we're just asserting the current state. And then we'll fix things as they come up. We don't need to fix that bug right now. It's not a beta blocker, but we're documenting it. The code confirms it exists, and we're moving on. So then we see that it has the advanced options. We click on advanced options. That's cool. If we hover over it, it actually shows the action happening. I'm learning Cypress as we go through this. I know some things, and that's really cool. When you hover over click, it shows the actions happening. I'm curious about typing. Interesting. So we'll see here, it was trying to find a label of Drupal core version, and instead an update happened and we only have Drupal core. And we can inspect this. So label for Drupal core version, it has actually been changed. So now if we go into here, into our test, and I'm going to update the label from just Drupal core version to Drupal core. And if I hit Command S to save, and we go back to Cypress, I can find modifying the test causes it to automatically rerun. And you'll see that the test passed. So our test, tabbing between these is always so hard. So our test says select 7.79, and that is what happened. So now the next part of this step, so we have it auto completes. It allows auto completing of a project with the version selected. The project can modify the Drupal core version. I think the next step would be attaching a patch. So we'll go through and try that out. So we're going to copy, we'll say, it should. So these are also labeled in like behavior driven development, like behat. So my wording is a bit wrong. It should allow me to attach a patch to my project. So we'll do cy.visit / and I feel like we could turn this into a command of saying like the autocomplete, simplify this, because we're going to copy and paste this a whole bunch. So since we're learning, let's stop the test. Let's do that. Let's create a new custom command. This is all documented in their site. And if you go to Cypress and you go to their docs. So that's one thing I want to note too. If you go to Cypress and it's like, this looks like a company, because it is. Think of like, I don't know how many people are familiar with Sauce Labs, but Sauce Labs is like a hosted runner for Selenium. I don't even know. Maybe they are the ones that made Selenium, and now Selenium is called WebDriver and is a standard. So Cypress, the company, built this testing suite, but then you can like have this dashboard and have their own runners that run things and like really improve the testing experience. So in their docs, they explain how to write commands, or somewhere in here. Tooling, core concepts. It's in here. Tooling. Actually, I don't even know where in here. References. But it's somewhere in the docs. We're just going to go ahead and write a new command. So we're going to do cypress.commands, and we're going to add select project. What do we even call this form? What is the label? We get label, evaluate. Pick project. We'll just call it pick project because naming things is the hardest part about web development. Sorry, not web development, software development, any kind of development. Naming things is hard. So we'll call this input, and basically just copy all of this, and we'll change. So we'll basically copy all of this, and we'll change input. Now, these two weights, I was having weird bugs happen, so I don't know if they're needed, but I'm just going to keep them for now. And so do command, pick project. So let's try this out. Let's, instead of get label, we're going to say pick project. We'll change this to be password policy. And this is the thing with test-driven development, right? Is we wrote this test, we verified it passed. So let's go ahead and rerun it with our changes. And if we're green, we're good. If not, we broke something. And that's the whole point of test-driven development. Just write a test, get it green, verify it works, document the bugs, then move on and keep going there and find improvements along the way. Simplified our test writing by exporting that to a command. So now we can write more tests more efficiently instead of having to copy and paste things nonstop. So let's do cy.pick project. This time I'm going to do path auto, which I found out I don't know how to type. I kept having mistypings and causing failures all across the board. So we'll do pick project, and we'll do, we're going to talk about the details environment, and we'll save. CY_visit is not a function. Oh, again, I don't know how to type visit. All right. So now we want to add patches on the chosen project. So one thing that I've been doing with our tests is a lot of times you see in tests where they just pick like an input ID and then type on it. I don't like doing that because you're not testing your accessibility technically. Like, I'm not an accessibility expert in any way, shape, or form, but I do know that there should be a label, and that label should point to an input, and all inputs should have a label. So we have a command that we got from an example site that is, we call get by label. So it finds the label, it finds a label element with that name, and then gets the for attribute, and then finds the element that has that ID. So I like to think that we are adding accessibility testing in here at a very basic level. So we need to figure out how we can identify these different patch versions. So this input has no label. So there's no way for us to fill it in right now. So we need to go through and fix that. So to prevent unnecessary runs, I'm going to stop Cypress. And I'm going to create an issue. And since we're probably going to fix multiple things, beta bug smash, we'll just call it 425. There's going to be a bunch of things that come into this fix. Normally, in my workflow, I make an issue per fix, but a lot of times I do that when I can merge things, and or do that, but you know that everything's going to conflict on itself, but we don't really have the time to do that. So this is kind of like a bloated, like, blah, here's fixing everything. For launch form. So again, it's not how I normally would do things, but we're just getting stuff done. These are fixes found during the 4.25 bug smash for beta. Project patches have no label and cannot be accessed. All right, so we're gonna just start there. I'm gonna create my issue for and check it out, and we're going to add labels to those. So that way they're accessible. And if anybody watching this is an accessibility expert or is much more knowledgeable than me, I'd love to have you test some of this or help us write better testing with accessibility in mind. All right, so I'm going to copy the add and fetch this issue repository command. And I'll run it in my repo. And then I will check out the bug branch. All right, so we're here. So we've got our test and we know that something's going to fail. So let's go into the theme. That's where the React app lives, is inside the theme. In the lib component, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time for this code. I do every stream because the React app is a hot mess. I just threw it together to get it to work. So one of the beautiful parts about using like React or JavaScript in general is there isn't a right or wrong way. You just kind of can write code just like PHP, and it's not exactly organized. It grew very fast in a very inefficient manner. Oh, why is there so many? Okay, because it's just running the linter. So what we have going on here is prettier is being extremely loud. So we have this input. So let me reload it here. So password policy, advanced options. So we have these things that are together. This X probably shouldn't show when there's nothing added, but that's fine. So if we do add patch, it keeps adding things here. And we want it to be accessible via a label. So if we go into here, we have input type. Once I'm just seeing something, is there like a URL input type? I don't know. I honestly have to go look all these up half the time, the different input types. HTML5 input types. Just, I want like a list. Search on URL. All right. We need to change that to be URL for some basic validation. Because the fact that I was able to just type in something random shows that. We should do it. So on, remove extra patches. So we need to figure out how to have a label here. So here's our map and here's this. So we want to have a label, and we have all of the labels are doing a screen read only on there. I need to figure out where I put in a class name. Okay, so we're putting it on the label. So we'll do class name SR only. And the thing is, the name has to be dynamic, and so does the ID. So if we make this be ID is project patches. Let's just go real simple. Okay. So the ID will be that, and this label will then be for HTML4. Oh, okay. So is everything wrong here where I'm saying apparently we have a few things we need to get fixed in the code. So we've got the label HTML, like SR only, HTML4 here. I guess what we could just say is project patch. Why can't I even think about how you put in text? Okay. Yep. So that should be it. So now we'll go to our build in the package.json. And I'm going to, I'll just run build. And we're going to verify that we have those labels. I was just building the CSS. I'm going to do a hard refresh just to make sure. Let's grab, we'll do path auto. So now, if I look at this, now I could have just done a test. I could have just wrote a test to see if it fails, but we'll be a little bit faster here. And I don't see it. Oh, I have CSS pre-processing on. Let me turn that off. I was testing a bug, and that's why I kept that on. So let me uncomment these. If you did not know this, you can have your config default to having CSS and JavaScript aggregation on, but then turn them off using these two lines of code. You can find that in the example.settings.json or example settings.local.php. That's where you can copy and paste that if you'd like. Right, so let me get back to the advanced options. And now, okay, we do have a label. Have project patch, and then it is an empty string, or I don't like, why is it breaking it into two lines? And 0 sounds wrong in this, like in that case. It's like humans don't think on 0, like zeros, we're not taught that 0 is a real number. So let's see, what's going to be the best way to do this? So that's okay, and that's okay. If we did want to be on one line, that wouldn't do it. Let's do, before I move further, we're going to try running, we'll run watch. And this will take a minute to load up. It's super weird because I feel like I just forgot everything about React for a moment and embedding variables in with text. JSX, text and variable, no white space. I'm gonna close out Chrome there. So with the watch, it's using Laravel Mix. So localhost 3000 is actually proxying to the DDEV site, and anytime we the JavaScript, it's going to reload this page, but we'll see the Drupal site going on there. Best practices when adding. That's not what I want. White space between inline elements. No idea. So let's see here. Again, I'm probably just going down the rabbit hole, something that I don't need to go down. So we'll just try test this out. And I wonder if it's just because it's considered this is a string, and then it prints this as the integer. So to be curious, let's do to string. So if I save that and then go back to Brave, you'll see it reloaded the page. And browser sync is connected. I'm just curious if that's part of it. Nope, that had nothing to do with it. All right, I'm going to stop the watch. I'm going to undo that. The build's okay. And let's just run the test. So we toggle the advanced options. So cy dot get by label. The label was project patch 0. Instead of figuring out how to make it be like project patch 1, or maybe makes more sense, I'm going to punt that down the road right now, because at least we are getting a label. We can figure out the niceties later. That's, I think, the hardest thing to learn as a developer, is to not go down a rabbit hole, but to say like, yep, this isn't great. How do we just keep moving forward? And one way that I often do that is say in here, to do, this is not a great number to put in label. There, we'll just make that a to do. So we want to get by label project patch .0, and we want to do .type, and we will say https drupal.org. I think this is in here. Okay, here's a sample URL. And then we'll find cy dot contains add patch, click, and cy.get label. So when we do this, we're testing that we can add a patch, and we should get an additional one added. So we should have project patch 0, then project patch 1. Cypress is still running, so let's open this. So it typed it in, and we did contains add patches. So we do have contains there, but it caught add patches instead of this button. So let's look at the button. So let's see. Cypress find button. Find selector, blah, blah, blah. Well, here's what we can do. So we'll say cy.get button contains, I believe this would work. And since we have everything running, it should refresh, get going. And there we go. So we were able to add a patch, and we know that this is working. I guess the next part would be verifying that we can delete an item. Like if I click the X on that, it clears it out. So let's go to, I'm going to bet that this X does not have a button on it. This is the weird one where I don't know how this would look, and I actually don't know how Drupal does it. But I guess like buttons don't necessarily need labels. Yeah, so the labels are the let you read what the input's saying, and the button doesn't need a label. It just needs, we need a better way to target that label or that button. So what we can do is have these patches. So we have it where the input has project patch. Then we should do project patch 1 and update this to be project patch there. This has a key. Do not use array index to key it. Well, that's what we're going to do. It should actually probably just be patch, because the patch is a string, and we're going to do ID is we need a way to target this one ID or this one patch area. So if we change this to project patch K, but what if we made this be project patch URL? Because that is what we're typing in. So now we can have unique IDs here and unique IDs to target for finding buttons to remove. So let's go to here. Let's do CUI.get one. And then we're going to do get button. Is right, the button here. There's only the one button in it. And we'll say maybe we'll assert more that it's like, so we get project patch 1, we get the button, we assert that it contains X, because right, it's not like a full cross. You know, the alternative here could be ampersand there's some kind of like actual like cross thing for the X. But we'll just say it contains, oh, that isn't regular X, that is like the HTML character. Contains that, and we click. So then we can do CUI dot should not I'm going to look that up on how we should. Basically, we want to make sure that this label no longer exists. But real quick, we'll clear it out and make it to do. To do has no text. Do I prefer Cypress to Nightwatch? I really like Nightwatch because it doesn't have all this extra UI on top of it. The only reason we didn't use Drupal's Nightwatch test suite is due to some of the things in Drupal. Basically, we were hitting bugs here. So to explain why we didn't use Nightwatch with Drupal is right here, whenever there's a request being made, it tries to find the current test user agent and it appends it to the header, because Drupal reads this and knows what database to use. Because you could run multiple tests at once and it uses test prefixes to create database table prefix names. And that's how it allows you to know what server or like what database tables to use. The problem we were hitting is this can actually cause grief sometimes. And apparently it really explodes if you run this during a site install. But even without that site install, we were having some weird errors happening, like whenever fetching out to a remote site. So when our code would try to ping Drupal.org, it would still generate these headers. And this generate test UA was causing a new key to be generated, and the directory was protected, and it just kept exploding. So that has less to do with Nightwatch and more about Drupal's way of using functional testing. Now, with that out of the way, when it comes to writing tests, they're basically the same. Like under the hood, they're all using Mocha, Karma, whatever other testing suites, and like the assertions. Cypress is neat because you get this runner and you get like all this visual stuff. I say neat because do I need it? No. Do I think this would probably help a lot of contributors that maybe have no idea how to write tests? Probably. Would I have rather just written Nightwatch? Yeah, I think so. But this would probably be better for the community at large that maybe isn't well versed in testing or is getting used to it or likes this visual stuff. There are some neat things, there are some cool things involved. We'll take a quick detour and I'll show you something that I recently used. So with Drupal's functional JavaScript tests, I would actually create screenshots along the way, and that was something we would send to the client. Like, here's the story. Like, do you like this or not? What you can do with Cypress is when you do Cypress run, shoot. I only want to run a certain test. 1 second. So when you do the run operation, it doesn't launch the user interface and it creates videos for you. So run, I want to run a specific test. Spec, okay. So we're going to just show this off really quick. If I can find the test, here we go. So do Cypress run. Hopefully this goes as I plan. So it launched. Oh, did it launch? So this has no user interface. It just is showing that it's running. Chrome does this too when it's in headless. Like you just see like the thing and there's no server running. Oh, no test files were found. Oh, Cypress integration test launch. Seriously, the autocomplete stuff inside of package.json and the IntelliJ products is really nice that it shows like actually the file path. I recently found out that when you start to type in here, it actually loads the Node.js binary. It finds it. So to get back on preferring Cypress to Nightwatch, yes, because it is very utility, right? It doesn't have a lot of the things on top. Cypress, I am liking a bit more for some of these extra features and onboard like new users. The other project I'm using on the client, I'm using it to help teach some friends how to become developers and hopefully get them like development jobs or be able to hire them. Cypress is my gateway for them to doing testing because it gives something that's more user friendly, I guess you could say. So here you'll see when we did run, it ran the form and it should be creating videos. Awesome, it is. So I'm going to wait for that to finish to go through. So again, I hope I don't have like a good answer because really I do like Nightwatch a lot, and that's what Drupal core uses. But when it comes to writing tests, it's basically the same output. So that failed. So now if we go open in Finder, and whoa, that's huge. So this is what happens when you record a video, is it actually records the entire Chrome driver experience so you can like play it back. Once I started doing this kind of made me enjoy Cypress a lot. I recorded a checkout flow or a free trial sign up, and then somebody paying for their free trial, and then sent this video to the client. And I was like, is this what you want? And it saved me from having to do a screen share. So you can see here that it's clicking through, it added the patch, and couldn't find project patch 1. So it's becoming one of my favored tools, and I can see why everybody else has liked it too. Yeah, the video feature, like that's what blew my mind. And I'm pretty sure Nightwatch.js could do it because it's not, the video recording isn't Nightwatch specific. It's just they already built that integration part of it. You know, you can, with the way that it works, it's actually a web page that has your site in an iframe that it runs the test against, and then its test runner. So you could have Chrome driver record videos on your own. It's just you would have to write the code for Nightwatch to do it. So I just want to make that clear. Like what they're doing isn't like some proprietary thing in their test runner. It's part of what you can already do with WebDriver and Chrome. It's just you would have to write it or find the plugin that does and provide it out of the box. So I want to get back to that test failure now. What's running right now? Go back to Cypress open. So little detour. Hope that was cool and showed a few things. I like writing tests because it lets me create artifacts and screenshots or videos to send to clients for approval instead of having to do screen shares. Now, as you saw that video, like it was always scrolled down more than it should. So it's not great, but it can be very effective. So our test failed when trying to find project patch 1 because it's project patch, because I didn't build the JavaScript. So let me build the JavaScript again quick. And then we can run the test. If you notice in our output, it's talking about Tailwind, and then we're building CSS. I like to use Tailwind CSS for like everything because I don't like writing CSS manually or media queries. And it also just makes scaffolding user interfaces a lot easier. But we are moving everything to be, well, actually, there was Sass and Tailwind. And then QED42 got the theming done, and they recently migrated all of our CSS to use the same build pipeline as using Post CSS and all the Post CSS tools. Although I think it's still using the Post CSS tools. Maybe we're using Post CSS in our own build file. I haven't looked at it yet. Yep, looks like we're running our own Post CSS in Gulp. Ideally, we would use the same scripts as core, like Olivero does. But we'll be taking out Tailwind for that. It's just Tailwind makes it really easy to scaffold these user interface components. So we did the build. So now we should have this fixed again. And if I find back to my window, launch form, I guess to make one argument about Nightwatch versus Cypress, with Nightwatch, I don't have 2 extra tabs I have to deal with. If you want to get to the nitty-gritty comparisons. So we typed, and it's not finding. So that's weird. Why did it only type an H? So get project patch 0. It only typed H, and then it bailed out. Well, that's different. And then I couldn't find project patch 1. So let's inspect this. So how I brought up that it's just recording a web page. See here, there's the app, and here's the reporter. Here's the main container, and it's actually running the site in an iframe. So that's how it's able to record all the things. So you could have Nightwatch or any JavaScript runner, any WebDriver. PHP unit could probably do this. In Drupal core with PHP unit and functional JavaScript, we could probably send a WebDriver command to record a video. And maybe that's a cool stream I should do. I'm going to write that down as an idea. So stream idea, PHP unit, functional JavaScript, video, record. All right, so I wrote that down. Now I want to figure out why we weren't able to find this input, because project patch 1. Commands. The ID's there. Tried to find it, but never found it. I'm going to try rerunning. Run all tests, disable auto scrolling. What does that do? So something happened. Like, why did it stop typing everything in? I'm going to try something. I'm just going to do wait 200 and see if we can figure out why. It's so weird. Why isn't it? Well, that's silly. I'm just going to comment some of that stuff out. Again, it didn't type everything out. So the thing that changed is our code here. All right, I can't handle these prettier warnings. Form label must have all the following types. Nesting ID. What? We did that. Try to get prettier to be less angry. I'm going to try rerunning the build and manually trying to fetch that ID. Like, why would it stop typing? Still trying to figure out this one too. So form label must have all the following types of associated control. Nesting ID. associating label. Yeah, the label text is not only visual associated, it is programming associated with too. You can click the label to focus. You need to give it an ID attribute, which we do. We have a 4. Like, is it just I don't know. I don't know. But let's just focus on this part here. So we've got path auto. I'm gonna click add patch, and we should have. We're trying to get that element. So if we do, I learned this trick out, and this is major kudos to West Boston Scott Talinsky on Syntax FM. So if you do, so apparently they said you could do $, but when you do double dollars, a built-in command line API. So if we did $, there in our console, it actually returns the object and as an array. Now the alternative is you could do document dot like get element by ID if we have just one element, or document dot query. So we could do query selector all. And the main difference is that query selector and query selector all returns a node list. The $2 returns it as an actual array of a node list. So that's really cool. What's not cool is the fact that we've got the ID here. You know what? Actually, I hit this before. I'm going to stop Cypress. I was hitting this on another project. I'm going to relaunch the form. I made changes to my JavaScript, and it's like it didn't care and didn't recognize it. And I had to start the Chrome instance that it uses. But that's not the case here, because it's still being silly. I don't know what could have changed to make this break. So project patch 0. The things I changed is I made the ID and the labels different. But that in no way should affect it being typed. Maybe because I changed the type from text to URL. Let's try that. That is one thing I changed. This is one reason it's good when you do testing to only make one change and then run the test, because you find things that break. Instead, I changed the type and the IDs without running the test to see if something broke. So running tests often is something you should always do. What would be neat is to get Cypress to watch for changes in the source and rerun the test. Not only edit the test, but if my sources change, it could rerun the test. So that's not it. I'm just gonna go back. Unfortunately, all right. So we've got that. I'm going to do the build and see if we can get this to pass again, because that brings us to, I think, when it was working. All right, build. So let's rerun the test. What did I do? All right, so that typed in. So let's get cracking here. So let's try this. Was it when I changed the key to be patch? Let's try that, because it said that you shouldn't use the array index as your key. This key is used to help, from my understanding of it, is it's used to track changes during state to know if something should be rebuilt or not. Because if let's say that a component's rebuilt, but its state didn't change, it needs to see if what if the ordering changed, and then it knows it needs to rerun that. I'm not exactly sure. Sorry, I hit my microphone. I'm not entirely sure, but the value, you really want the key to be based on the value, not necessarily its position in the array. So we're going to rerun. I don't know if there's a way to only rerun failed. It's one thing I wish I knew more about. I'm sure I could look it up, and that did it. Look at that. I changed the oh, that's why. So now it makes sense. As we're typing, the value is being updated, and on change, the value is being updated, so it doesn't know, it loses track, it gets recreated. So we're going to change that back to K, and I'm going to make a note of, I feel like that's not the right way to put a comment here. Note, we should not use K, but if we use patch, the value is constantly modified on change as the array. Oh, so we have a huge performance problem here. This is a major performance problem as we're constantly rebuilding the entire component whenever someone types. So yeah, we got a performance problem here. So every time somebody changes the text, it is rebuilding the patches array, setting the value for this, and then updating the state. And with React, we need on change to push the value somewhere. We can't just say on blur. Yeah, so it's not the greatest, but it's also not really breaking the site right now. So what's actually build runs more than just what we need. Oh, I don't want to open the lock file. So build compiles the JavaScript and the CSS. We're just going to do production, and that will run just our JavaScript. So I hope that makes sense, why it broke. It's just patch is the value, and it changes on each run. We don't really have a better identifier beyond the key. So I guess we know that the order does matter. We don't allow re-indexing. So I'm going to just say suppress there. And we'll say, we'll just leave that there. That'll be something we tackle another time. So like I said, when you make changes, you should rerun your test after every change so you catch these problems. I would have saved a lot of grief if I would have done that. So we can see now we're passing. So let's go back and reapply some of my changes, where I change this to be project patch URL, and this to project patch URL, and each div had an ID equals project patch K. All right, so let's build this, and hopefully we get a passing test. Then I'm going to commit it, and we'll have fixed one bug. Well, one-ish bug. Again, this is technically working, but it wasn't accessible. So that is a bug fix. I forgot to put identifiers as well. And honestly, that's probably why it was failing. So I forgot to put in the identifiers. So there we go. We cleared it out. Now, to do, we'll want to do that these are all empty to verify it clears out. So let's go to these, what is it, docs.cypress.io and examples. Oh, there's API assertions, all assertions, BDD, value, there we go. So we'll say cy.get to have value empty. And I wonder how you could do. So do Cypress verify element does not exist. Cannot read property of undefined. That's weird that you would pass. That will go, what was it? To have. Oh, because it's expect. That's right. Because I'm mixing like test driven with behavioral. So I think that's why. What? Attempted to make a chai jQuery assertion that an object is neither a DOM or. So what? Is neither DOM object or a jQuery object. Is it failing because it doesn't exist? What is the ID here? Oh, we're just breeze right past it, and I'm gonna get this commit ready. So I'm gonna rerun the build to make sure I didn't miss anything, and prep my commit. I'm gonna commit the run, but not limit it to the spec. Our integration, we've got the test. We added our commands. Again, as I'm going through and kind of open this, I'm doing Command D, which is the keyboard shortcut for show diff to view the changes. You know, it's so annoying with npm when you run npm install that it modifies your lock file. Like, isn't that the complete opposite of what a lock file is supposed to? Yeah, I don't like npm. I'm a big fan of yarn. But that's what we have going on here. So this, we added the fixed the statement there. And here we added the labels, and we'll do that. Add labels to patches elements. So let's go ahead and push that. And you can see that I'm pushing to my issue fork. So now if I go back to the issue, I didn't open a merge request ahead of time. I'm going to click that. And if I go to the merge request, you'll see that my commit is there and ready to go. And I refresh this page to show that we got a comment. All right, so let's move to the next testing of the form. So the next bit would be testing that we can check manual installation and the default profiles. I'm actually going to go for the install profile because if we pick Drupal like an 8.x version, we should see minimal here, and it doesn't. So there's a few things going on here. So if we pick 8.1.1, you'll see that we get 8.9. So maybe that's something that I need to test, is that the core versions available are updated. So between 1.6.beta1 not support Drupal 9, 1.6 didn't either, but 1.7 did, and that's when the 9.x branch becomes available. So I think we'll test that next to make sure that that's in code coverage. So I'm going to just stop everything that's running to get 2 tests written. So we'll say it should adjust available core versions based on compatibility. So we'll do cy.visit there. And I feel like we could probably just move that into, I wonder if we even need to call that for the first part, but I'm just going to move it into the before each because I'm kind of sick of having to type it every time. Simplytest.me has 2 pages, the home page and then the progress page. There's not much else to it. So we'll just make that be a default. So we'll do cy.pick project. We'll do path auto. And what happens in here when we... So how do we... Path auto should have that. And we'll expand the advanced options and we'll say Drupal core should have 7.8.0. But then if we do cy.get by label project version, and the helper method is select. Let's select value 8x.1.6. So we'll do 8x1.6. Then Drupal core version should be 8.9.8. And we'll repeat this to be 8.18. We'll just pick 8.18, which means that this would have 9.1.7. I realize I have a typo here. So was that 9.1.7? All right, so as we pick core compatibility, things change. And what should be happening here is if we get Drupal 8 or 9, we should see the Umami demo as the install profile. So I'm going to copy this test. It should show Umami demo for Drupal 8 and Drupal 9 sites. When was Drupal Umami added to new profile demo Umami added to core? What version? 8.6. So really only show it if it's 8.6 8.6.x. So we'll keep that here, and we're going to say Cypress check assert options in a select list. How to assert which value is selected in a drop down? Should contains. We'll look at should and contains. All right, so let's just start here. So cy.get by label, we need to check the install profile. Should contains, get the DOM element that contains more than one, that contains one or more desired text. I guess we could do that. So we could say should includes. Let's look at, there was an include. No. Get the DOM element. Usage contains arguments, string number, blah, 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 blah. Get form contains the submit form. Yeah, we did that. Number. I guess we're just going to give it a shot. No, I don't. Cypress select elements. So if we do should, selecting elements, we're going to select elements and select 2 widgets. All right, some straight on the blog. How to control their, and the recipe select widgets. So it sets MA, so get state select MA. Like, yeah, that's, we know that, but I want to verify that it has different values. Select as an array. Ooh, that's the values. Invoke val. Blur. Select 2. Let's try this. We'll do get by label. Let's just say contains minimal and standard. And we'll do same here. I feel like this is going to be the more complicated one. What do we call it? Do we call it the umami demo? Yeah. We'll say, just weird because the machine name is demo umami, but it's really the umami demo. That's all right. I don't know if this is going to work. It's probably not, but let's try it. And at some point, I feel like we're putting a lot of tests into this one spec, and maybe we need to spit it out, but I don't know. Organizing tests is a very, there is no right or wrong way, in my opinion. So let's run this. And hopefully the contains will find the option elements with the text. That's my goal. So contains finds elements that have that text. Let's run this. We're also testing that the available core versions are adjusted too. Path auto, passed. Ooh. So That means it was undefined, which means that we're missing a label. So let's go fix that. Oh no, did I freeze? All right, sorry about that. I froze up for a minute. So we want to get to the advanced options, Drupal core version selector, additional projects. Said this is where it's a mess. Select the profile. So this is where the bug exists. With 9.0, why would I do that? Drupal version index of 8. I feel like we need to make a better way of doing this, but let's start with the label. There is a label, but it's not for anything. So we'll say 8.4 is install profile. Let me change the select ID to equal install profile. Add it in this code. Const valid checks would be, so we know it's 8.6. It's 8.7 dot. It's 8.8 dot. And it's 8.9 dot. And then anything in 9 dot. So those are the valid checks. And it's like const is valid equals previous value, current value. So we're going to do it in reduce, allowed, and we have version. And we'll say if allowed, we'll say return allowed, or Drupal version dot index of index of version equal to 0. So what this should let us do is we're going to reduce the checks value and say, like, are any of these allowed? Maybe there's like index. There might be a smarter way to do it, but this is what came to my mind. And if you want, let's test this in action actually. So I love using the console for this stuff. So in the console, let's say let Drupal version equal 8.6 dot. Wait, is valid just returned 8.6 and not? That's not what I expected. I completely expected it to return a Boolean. Initial value is false. Well, we'll try it out. We'll see. So I'm going to run the, not Cypress run, but production. And then we'll rerun the test. Because then we should have our label. And we should fix the bug where the umami demo doesn't show up. So now you could test path auto with the umami demo, not just our one-click demo here. All right, so we got that going on. Refresh the page or the tests. So it found standard. So let's see. Minimal. So yeah, so it yielded minimal, yielded standard. It got back that label. It got back that select. Error timed out. So applied to select. Reveal an elements panel. Node cannot be found. So it's like it had a stale object. Let's go back to our test and see what might be going on here. Because I know I'm reading this and it hurts my head. It's like, let's see. Drupal 7. Let's add notes. Drupal 7 has no umami. Default Drupal 8 has umami. Drupal 9 has. And I want to see where it failed and why, because now I don't remember. So it's when it picked the 8.9.8. So after we selected 8.6, 8.16, why? It's like it has a stale object. So let's look at our command. So Cypress contains label, contains cast. Get to DOM element containing text can Cypress has stale object. Has stale element value. They're trying to get attribute from element in Cypress. Let's see. When I get value element, tried its value should contain, get the error timed out. Shoot. I don't understand that. Selecting basic elements. So that's really awkward. It select attribute 4. So wait, we got this here. Git install profile. Oh. Oh, I wonder if bum 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 bum. No, I know what. Let's try a. Let's wait 100 milliseconds and see if that makes a difference. I wonder if it's moving faster than React can re-render the components, and that's why. Because if the element's missing, that means it got re-rendered. So hopefully that did it. Should show the umami demo for 8.6. So if we look here, yep, so it passed. So now we should add the negative test case where, you know, I kind of want to have these, keep these assertions after all. So we can just show that it's defaulting to this here. But now what we should do is change. Now, I don't think we should allow anybody to launch an 8.5 instance because it's insecure, but that decision hasn't been quite made yet. So we're just going to pick a version. Oh, actually, this isn't even. Oh, wait. 1.6. So you'll see it's 8.1.7 says it only supports 8.8 and onwards, whereas the others show all these previous ones. So let's pick 8.5.9. So do 8.5.9 contains Cypress not contains. I guess just should not exist. I don't know if that's it. Some of the the chaining and the wording just confuses me to beyond no belief. And I can never get it straight in my head. All right, so we got the test. Hopefully now we can verify that. Oh, did I edit something in the wrong spot? Oh, should have. Select. There we go. All right, so now we'll have test coverage there. Awesome. Hey, that worked. I am extremely surprised that that worked on the first go. So now we can assert the umami demo and I'm going to commit this. I'll run the full build again. I'm going to stop Cypress. So now we've got the next test case, which is going to be the fun one. And I'll start walking through that. So what happened here? Yeah, we just added the umami demo fixes. Verify test core selection, fix label for install profile, fix umami demo profile selection. These commit messages are not that great either, but on Drupal.org, they get squash merged with the issue name anyways. So next, we're going to show a more complex thing that we need to test. And I'm hoping that we've now have enough base layers that we can just do it in time. So we have password policy. And this has a submodule available. Password policy pwned. There we go. It got auto imported. So if you'll notice, it has no versions available because .org password policy pwned is only an 8.x version. So we need to verify that when you pick something and add an additional project, the versions are based off of the core constraint. So if we change this to be, this says it supports 8 and 9. So if we change this to be 3.0 beta 1, it's 9.7, but we need this to automatically update. Because now when I actually select the project, we get the versions. So this is the next test. And I'm going to make that its own test. So we're going to do my new keyboard has a lock key on it, and I just locked the computer. So I'm sorry if that blipped out for a bit. Inside integration, we're going to just make a new directory called launch form. Well, everything's a launch form. So we'll do additional projects.spec.js. No, I like the idea of this launch form doesn't need a fresh install, but we want these to have a fresh install because they test auto import, and that on install we have core versions. So do describe test additional projects and version constraints. Ooh, getting it now. All right, so let's copy this before. So it should restrict incompatible additional project releases. So let's pick this password policy version 7. Toggle details element. I feel like that should just be a command called like open advanced options instead of just toggle detail elements. So we've got to that point. We don't need, advanced options. I'm going to just refresh the page so I can make sure I do this right. So password policy, advanced options. The name of the button is add additional project. So we'll do cy dot contains, what did I do? Button. Get button contains. Okay. cy dot get button dot contains additional project, and let's do a click. So if I do a click, we're again going to get something without labels that we can't fill in, I bet. Yep. Oh, wait. So this says downshift. So it's doing the React aria labeled by downshift label. But where's so let's do $. Nothing. Nothing. So this is broken on accessibility ways. And oh man, so it's reusing the same component um as the top. So let's see if we can get this testable. Because I would love to have it tested before I end the stream in like 20 minutes. So we'll see what I can get going in time. Even if I have to just like hack it in. And I think that's what I might do. Is just hack it in. So let's go to our app for launcher. Nope, that's the context. So install options, core version selector, additional projects. So the div, there's the key. So I guess the first start would be ID equals additional project. Like, let's at least get it so we can target this. And project selection is the shared component and the shared autocomplete. But where's the label? If additional button is true, we set it to have no label. All right. We need that to have something. Let's just say additional project, and I can't type. Even when I did the autocomplete, I still messed it up. So let's run the production again. We're going to start there. At least I've got an ID wrapping each individual additional project, which makes it easier for me to target the input there. It's not perfect. This is going to be harder to from an accessibility standpoint. So I'm going to start here again. I'll do policy, add additional project. So adding the label, it didn't even label it properly because I didn't wrap it in the appropriate items. So it's label and spread operator, get label props, class name of label. I don't know what that class name is for, but we're going to use it. And I'll paste additional projects. Additional name. We'll say that. We'll press play. I'm hoping the label class is what makes it the white color. But we do have this ID at least, which can target to this one individual project. So in my test, I can say, so click and then cy.get here. That's where we could do input type. What's the type here? Input ID. We don't put a type, so it's just ended up defaulting to text. Oh my. Get default input props. Use combo box. Use combo box props. Are we supposed to specify the type? I guess so. So we'll say type text. So that seems like it was broken. Did the first build. Let's see if that makes the label be styled a little bit more. So do password policy, expand, add. That did not make the text white. I applied the label. Because we'll just add the Tailwind classes to it. All right, so let's refresh it because that should be mostly built by now. Password policy, add additional project. All right, didn't build. There, now it finished. Do password policy, options, add project. Okay, there. Label. The margin bottom's not really doing much, but at least now we can go. So I can do additional project name. So you can do CY get, and then I can do get element or get by label inside of there, and get the additional project name scoped to that container. And I created a helper for this, didn't I? So form spec. What did I do? Pick project. So I should be able to run pick project inside of there. Actually, no, because it's a different label name. So I got to copy paste some of the commands. I'm going to type the of password policy pwned. And when we do that, there should then be this element. Oh man, in the project version is duplicating the ID. Show warnings. That didn't do it, but if we did, yeah, we have two elements in this, and that's not good. So why don't we go to the app, and we have project autocomplete. So project selector, version selector, set default version, applied core constraint. Needs to have a dynamic ID. Let's to do version selector can have a duplicate ID. Follow up there, and I'm putting the to-dos in code because that way when we make the merge request, before we close it, we can open those issues up instead of me taking 5 minutes to create an issue right now. So we're going to type into there and do the arrow down, and to work around the fact that we have a duplicate ID, I will do this. Keeps we get back an element, so we're going to call this const additional project, so that way we can read, because as you chain it modifies the scope of where you're working, and I want to be able to do multiple things in here. So we're going to do that. We'll do additional project dot get select. And how do we assert that it has no values? I think we can do it via the same test here. Get option should be empty. Hey, there we go. Let's try that. All right, so I'm going to run Cypress open, and we're going to try this, and hopefully we verify that, there's no versions for password policy pwned. Now, that user experience isn't great because it's like, why do I have no versions? But it's at least showing that you can't launch a Drupal 7 module and then add a Drupal 8 module, which would break. It's much better to get somebody quote unquote complaining about this form being broken than the site being built and they can't do anything with it. So let's do the additional project specs. Oh, but it picked. But what did it do here? So select. It did password policy pwned. But then when I waited down, enter, I did one down. It's because it's doing a basic SQL match, and password policy is like that. But why? Like here, it didn't show up twice. Let's try something. I feel like it's because it's so fast. Like it's like the autocomplete. Yeah. All right. Expected option 133 more to be empty. Select. Oh, it picked all the selects, but it should have been from. So I thought the CY get would focus inside of that, but it looks like it doesn't. Bum, 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 bum. So maybe we need to just try that out. So the type ahead is definitely a bit wonky with fast typing. That is sure. So I'm going to try something to see if we can get that. So it'll be around. Okay, that worked. Awesome. So now it's not finding the elements inside of here. Cypress, get element, and get other element. I don't know. Interacting. Well, I guess what we could do. Oh, I'm silly. These are all element selectors, right? So why not just add select after that? And like I said, when it comes to testing, why isn't it finding it? Why would jQuery be finding all of these things in there? So let's go look at the docs and see what is going on here. So API, commands. We have get EFG. The querying behavior for this command is similar to how it works in jQuery, which is why I'm so confused that it's not working. So if we go and we did, we want to change the frame here to your app. Oh, that's cool that they actually give names. You can see like your app, your spec. So your app, if we did document dot query selector all, we pasted this, we would get back an empty thing. But what it's returning is actually this. And that makes absolutely no sense to me. Why it's doing that. Options within subject. Oh, shoot. So let's do within subject. Null element to search for children in if null options. Well, that's one thing we can do is change it to be I think it's because we have to use contain. Maybe that's why. Because we need to use contains, like you get and get from the root, and then contains is what's scoped. So while that runs, contains, get the DOM element, contain the text. That passed. Okay, well, whoop-de. That's not what I was expecting. So now what we should see is if we change the project version, so launch form spec, let's do, should have value. What was it? 3.0 beta 1, I think, is what we're looking for. Yeah, 3.0 hyphen beta 1. I want this to not have length 0. Now this is going to fail because we're not automatically updating that when the project version changes. So let's try to get that fixed quick. We're at time for myself. I'll try to get this in quickly. So we need to look at the app for the additional projects. So additional Drupal version, use launcher. We want selected project version as well. So whenever the selected version changes, we want to rerun this. And to do so, that means that applied version constraint additional button. This shouldn't be the additional button. This should be dependent version is what that should have been called. Let's try an easier way. No. Yeah, we need to pass. Not in here. Project selection. All right. we're gonna. Oh, we need the version selector to refresh whenever the main one opens. So version selector, use effect if selected project, if applied constraint. So if selected project, this is so messy. So I have an idea where we will we'll do const what is it called? Drupal version inside of use launcher equals use launcher. So we're getting that context. And inside launcher, we have selected version. But that's also something passed in here. Root selected. That should allow us to alias it to be root selected version. No. Okay, so if applied core constraint, we want this to rerun if the main project version changes. But only if there's applied constraint. So if applied constraint, we want that to run. So if applied core constraint, now this is going to be so imperformant. So I need to try to explain this. We want this to re-render if a version changes, but we don't want it to re-render if its own version changes, which is hard to do. Like we basically want to refetch versions if the parent project had its version changed. So we'll say we'll just try to prototype this. We'll call it root project, or we'll say the selected project is called root project, right? That's what we have, selected project and selected version. Selected version is root project version. So if there's a project selected, I'm going to go here. So if there's an applied constraint, so if there's an applied core constraint, we want to make the dependency selected project, and we want to add a dependency on root project version. But we don't want this to necessarily run every time the root project version changed. And that's the hard part. So you know what? That's why we're going to use two different effects. We'll use two different side effects. That's what we'll do. So we're going to make another side effect that cares about the selected project and the applied core constraint. So in here, if selected project and no core constraint, then we'll fetch. Like this could be problematic. And then here we say if there is a selected project and a core constraint, we'll do root project version should cause a re-render. So the thing we're trying to do here is trigger a re-render of this component. And we need it to re-render whenever the root project version changes. We don't care about the root project itself. So side effect, when we have a project short name and no core constraints, aka then aka the root project, fetch the direct versions. I broke something here because that's not the right API call. Because that is. So now we'll say side effect when we have a selected project, when we have a project short name and core constraints, we know this is a dependent additional project. If the root project version changes, we want to update for new compatibility. All right, I think that could do it. So I'm going to stop Cypress. I'm going to run watch so we can do a little bit of quick live reloading and see where we get. And hopefully this will get those project versions to automatically refresh when you change the project. Because it's one thing to get empty versions, but to pick something, have versions, and then they go away. Or you launch it and then it's broken. Let's do this. Come on. All right. So we did password policy, advanced options, additional project, password policy pound. So we want it where I pick this. It updated. Oh, sweet. It worked. It automatically updated. That is amazing. So if we pick alpha 3, oh, we got more password pwned. All right. But what happens if I pick 8.5? It kept running. Now let's go back to 7.2. Well, that's pleasantly surprising that it worked because I expected it to burn. And so let's stop the watch. Let's do a production build. And I'm going to rerun the test. Let's get the test nailed. And then I'm going to go do some yard work. And consider this to be pretty successful. Project patches have no label and cannot be accessed. I want to update this merge request for some of the tests that were added. So the commits, patches. Oh, umami demo not selectable for all. Ate that for not selectable when allowed. 8.6 plus 9, and then we'll say additional project versions update when core compatibility also updates. So honestly, I think that's probably my happiest right now is this alone. Getting the dependent versions to update automatically. I think that's the happiest part of this. It's additional project spec. So yeah, we're not going to assert the actual versions, but it should just be that once we change the project version, that gets updated. So let's wait for that to load. All right, additional projects. I hope this goes well. Expect undefined. Is that not? Well, we see it, but I need to update this. Why? Oh, again. We're just gonna put in a wait. We'll do 200. I need to get something in that's like wait for Ajax commands to finish, basically, or all XHR requests to finish. Well, what the hey? Expected to find content option within element select blah 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 blah, but never did. Names option at a 400-second wait. Well, come on now. Like, this has the option. Contains option. Expected to find content option within the element, but never did. But it's there. Just to make sure. Let's do, that should fail. Well, that's stupid. That shouldn't pass. To get contains option. Applied to. But there are options. All right, well, we're going to do it the other way, where so what is that? 8.x 1.beta 2. We're just going to assert the default value it has. Sorry, I just whacked the microphone again. Whatever. All right, it works. Cool. I'm going to commit this and close Cypress. Let's just do a full build. All right. I think, I wanted to. The good news is we didn't find more bugs. I think we made it more stable. It wasn't like anything like groundbreaking. Um, but it's got more test coverage. I'm feeling more confident in the complexity that is the form, where we're able to change things. It is reactive. I think this last part was the big one where we got to the fact that we could add an additional project and those versions updated. So that's a good step. And yeah, one the I I don't know what else necessarily needs to be tested. We've gone through most of the actions. The main thing would be now actually trying to launch an instance and verify that goes through. Oh, one thing I forgot to show: it automatically generates screenshots too when you do the run. So here we'll say additional project versions update when core compatibility changes. That's a big one. So let's do a push. And I'm going to real quick go through my merge request. And just look at my changes, because in here I put various to do's to do. We need to open a follow-up ticket for this. There's one to do. I feel like I had more to do's in here. Maybe not. But that's at least the one thing to go through. I'll quick read through this. Oh, not that part. Well, I guess, yeah. I guess the next step is like actually just testing the form, which I'm afraid of doing that in the test because like we're gonna sit and wait forever. But I guess it's we're ready for manual testing. I think of the beta site. So I'm gonna put this as needs review and say when this is merged, I think we're ready for beta testing. Yep, we're ready for beta testing. And I need to think about a few other things real quick. I'm going to try to think about for what would make us more stable. If I go to projects and I go to cron, I'm going to make a new issue real quick called beta planning. Call it a plan. Let's formalize a plan for this beta stage. We're going to create a thing called RC blockers. So we're going to create beta stage, beta requirements. This should be used to identify bugs and RC blockers. Like I know one that we need here is on cron. We should ensure project releases are up to date. Needs ticket the old site would refresh every 4 hours or so, but on demand, not on cron. So like we need a ticket for that, and I guess we can figure out the next steps. So, and one thing we'll need is a smoke test script. So, if you're not familiar with that, a smoke test is basically you write a test, and then the it's smoke testing is what you call manual testing, basically. Um, but not like full rigorous. It's like you just quick go through things. To do write a script, a sample manual testing script for folks to try. And let's do a scenarios tested. Please comment or update this section with scenarios tried. Example. We'll do version. I don't have it up right now, but we'll say 8.x 3.0 beta 1. Drupal core. We'll say 8 9.1.1. Projects. All right. This done. Good. First start. All right. So I think that's a good start. I wish we could like pin issues, but that's not possible. All right. So thanks for tuning in with this live stream. I hope learned some cool things about service and testing along the way. I'm excited we didn't find major bugs, but it's kind of boring. But it was a lot of stability, like making sure that we have a very stable project. So there we go. Thanks again. I do these every Sunday, Simply Test Me, and then every Wednesday I do one for the Drupal 10 Readiness Initiative. So I will be back streaming on Wednesday for that. All right, have a good one.